The bench was empty. Celeste stood there for 3 full seconds before her brain caught up with her eyes. The crackers were still there. The little paper bag, slightly crumpled at the top the way Mia always crumpled things because she liked the sound. The crackers were there. Mia was not. She had been gone 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Before we continue, besties, kindly like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you'll be the first to be notified every time we upload a new fascinating and interesting videos like this. Celeste did not run. Running meant noise. Noise meant attention. Attention meant questions she could not answer without also explaining why her 3-year-old was sitting, unsupervised, outside the private staff elevator of the Chinga estate, the most expensive private residence in the city, on her 4th day of employment. She walked fast. She kept her face neutral the way she had learned to keep it neutral when things went wrong, and things had gone wrong enough in her life that she had become very good at the face. Supply room. Empty. Staff bathroom. Empty. The corridor that curved behind the west staircase, the one she always cleaned last because the baseboards were warped and took extra time. Empty. She rode the elevator floor by floor. First. Second. Third. The doors opened on the 3rd floor and Celeste stepped out and stopped. One yellow sneaker. Sitting upright on the marble floor, laces tucked neatly inside, positioned outside a set of heavy oak doors that had no nameplate and no number and no indication of what was behind them, except that every instinct Celeste had developed over 4 days of working in this building told her that door was not for her. It was open. Not wide. Just enough. The exact width of a very small, very determined 3-year-old. Celeste pushed it open. Mia was standing in front of the largest desk Celeste had ever seen, holding her remaining sneaker out with both hands like she was presenting evidence at a trial. She was speaking French, the specific, slightly rearranged French that lived only between Mia and Celeste, built from baby logic and late-night corrections and words Mia had decided meant something slightly different than they did. She was explaining, with great patience, that the shoe had come off in the elevator and she had needed someone to put it back, and the door was open, so she had made a decision. The man behind the desk was listening to all of this with complete attention. Celeste knew who he was. Everyone who worked at the Chinga estate knew who he was. Mr. Yoon Se-won, 33 years old. CEO of Darien Holdings, a company with divisions in shipping, biotech, construction, and 4 other industries Celeste could not immediately name. There were 3 business magazines on the corner of his desk. He was on the cover of all 3. He was holding Mia's shoe with both hands. He looked down at it. He looked up at Mia. He began, very carefully, to put it on her foot. He tied a double knot. Mia watched him do it with the focused satisfaction of someone whose problem has been correctly solved. Then she reached into her pocket, produced the other shoe, and held it out. "This one also," she said, in English this time, because she was flexible about language when the situation required it. "Where did this one come from?" Mr. Yoon asked. "You were only wearing one when you arrived." "I left it outside," Mia said. "It was heavy and I am very small." There was a pause. Mr. Yoon looked at the shoe. Something moved across his face that was not quite a smile but was in the same neighborhood. "That," he said, "is the most reasonable thing anyone has said to me all week." Celeste had forgotten to breathe. She remembered now and did it quietly. He put on the second shoe. He tied another double knot. Mia climbed, without invitation, into the chair across the desk and sat with her ankles crossed the way Celeste had taught her to sit when they went to places that required good behavior. She looked around the study with the calm assessment of someone deciding whether to stay. "You live here?" she asked. "Mostly," Mr. Yoon said. Considered the question more seriously than it probably required. "Mostly," he said again. Mia shook her head slowly. "That is not good," she said. "Alone is how you get sad. You should get a mother, or a man, or at the minimum a fish." "Which would you recommend?" She thought about it. Celeste watched her daughter think about it with the particular intensity she brought to questions she considered genuinely important. "A mother," Mia said finally. "Because fish do not talk back and talking back is important. When my mammon does not talk back, it means something is wrong." Mr. Yoon was quiet for a moment. He leaned back in his chair. Outside the window, the afternoon light was doing something amber and slow across the rooftops, and Celeste would remember this exact quality of light for a long time afterward without being able to explain why. "I am sometimes lonely," Mr. Yoon said. He said it the way people say things when they are not sure they meant to say them out loud. Mia nodded. She slid off the chair, walked around the desk, and climbed onto his lap with the calm certainty of someone who has assessed a situation and made a reasonable choice. She arranged herself, tucked her head against his chest, and closed her eyes. Within 4 minutes, she was asleep. Within 7 minutes, Mr. Yoon Se-won, CEO of Darion Holdings, his head tilted slightly back, was also asleep. Celeste stood in the doorway of his private study and watched her daughter rise and fall with the breathing of the most powerful man in the building. Both of Mia's yellow sneakers blinked faintly in the afternoon light. They blinked on a timer Celeste had never been able to figure out how to turn off. She stepped inside. She said Mia's name softly. Mr. Yoon's eyes opened first. He looked down at Mia. He looked up at Celeste. His voice, when it came, was quiet and unhurried, as if waking up with a stranger's child on his chest was something that happened regularly and he had no complaints about it. "Wake her," he said. Celeste opened her mouth, closed it. "I'm so sorry," she said. She was on the bench. I was 3 minutes. I don't know how she found this floor. I don't know how she opened. I am so sorry, sir. I'm Celeste. Celeste Arden. I'm on the cleaning staff, West Wing. I have been here 4 days, and I promise this is not something that will. Her French is very good," he said. "She grew up with it. Her and I, we have our own. It's a little different from." Celeste stopped. "I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. She gave me very direct advice about fish," Mr. Yoon said. "I haven't had direct advice from anyone in recent memory." He paused. "How long have you been in the city?" 18 months. "Before that," Celeste hesitated. "Amsterdam." He nodded slowly, like this answered something. He did not ask what it answered. Then Celeste looked at his shirt. She looked at it the way you look at something when you realize what you are seeing 1/2 second after it is already too late. She had not put Mia in a fresh diaper before she left her on the bench. She had meant to. She had been 3 minutes and 40 seconds away. She looked at Mr. Yoon's shirt. He followed her gaze. There was a silence of approximately 4 seconds. "It is just a shirt," he said. He said it without any performance in it. Like it was simply true, and he wanted her to know it was true. He reached out and touched the back of her hand, not grabbing, just contact, a 1/2 second, and then he looked back out the window. Celeste did not know what to do with that, so she did what she always did when she did not know what to do. She kept moving. Mia woke up 20 minutes later, blinked at the ceiling, and then at Mr. Yoon with the calm recognition of someone who had not forgotten where they fell asleep. She sat up. She looked at his shirt. She looked at Celeste, who gave her a very specific look that meant they would discuss this privately. "I'm sorry," Mia said to Mr. Yoon, in the formal voice she used when she knew she had done something that required the formal voice. "Sorry is not enough," he said. "You have to mean it." She considered this seriously. "I mean it with my whole body," she said, "including my elbows." "Then I accept it." She reached down, unlaced one sneaker, and held it out to him. "You can have this one." As a sorry present. He looked at the shoe. "I'll frame it," he said. Her face lit up. "You should hang it somewhere with good light," she said. "Yellow is better in good light." Celeste changed Mia's diaper in the corner of the study, behind the armchair, while Mr. Yoon returned to his bookshelves and ran his finger along the spines and did not make her feel strange about any of it. She had expected discomfort. She had expected the particular stiffness powerful people deployed when something inconvenient occurred in their vicinity. There was none of it. There was just a man looking at his books while a woman changed her daughter's diaper in his study, and the room held both of those things without any difficulty. Before they left, he asked, "Will you be in the West Wing tomorrow?" She said yes. He nodded. That was all. She arrived early the next morning. She was on her knees polishing the baseboards in the second-floor corridor. The ones she had noted on day 2 were warped at the seam near the window frame when she heard footsteps behind her. She assumed it was Park T doing his morning walkthrough. It was Mr. Yoon, in a different shirt. A very expensive shirt, she could tell by the way it sat on his shoulders, but not the kind of expensive that announced itself. "How did Mia sleep?" he asked. "Well," Celeste said. She sat back on her heels. "She asked for you before bed. She wanted me to confirm that the shoe was hung somewhere with good light." Something happened in his expression, not a big something. "Tell her yes." He sat down at the end of the corridor in the chair that Celeste had always thought was decorative. He opened his newspaper. She turned back to the baseboard. They stayed like that for 40 minutes. He read. She cleaned. Occasionally, she moved to the next section of baseboard, and the sound of her cloth on the wood was the only sound in the corridor besides the distant noise of the estate waking up. At some point, Mrs. Yim's voice drifted up from the kitchen below, giving instructions about breakfast service. A phone rang somewhere on the floor above and was answered immediately. Celeste would think about this later. She would think about how 40 minutes of silence next to a person you barely know should feel awkward, should feel strange, should feel like something to get through. It did not feel like any of those things. It felt, she would think, like the most companionable silence she had experienced in 2 years. She did not say this out loud. As she was packing her cart, he folded his newspaper and stood. "You've been eating alone at your cart for 4 days," he said. She did not ask how he knew. "I bring lunch." "The staff meal is at noon," he said. "Mrs. Yim sets an extra place whether or not people use it. She considers it an insult when people don't use it." He said this as information, not as instruction, not as invitation exactly, just something true that she might want to know. She went to the staff meal. Mrs. Yim put a plate in front of her without being asked and talked about the weather and the quality of the produce delivery that week. And Celeste ate a full meal for the first time in 4 days and did not cry about it, which she considered a personal success. 3 days after that, her daycare called. Mia had a mild fever, not high enough to treat, high enough to send home. Celeste stood in the hallway outside the supply room with her phone pressed to her ear and did the math on the day she had left. She had 3 floors of baseboards, a window service she had promised Mrs. Yim she would get to by Thursday. She could not afford a day off. She could not afford a half day. She absolutely could not bring her child to work. She brought Mia to work. Park T met them at the service entrance, looked at Mia, looked at Celeste, and said nothing except that the East Garden gate had a code and the code was 4471 and it reset on Fridays. "Mr. Yoon mentioned it was available," he said, in the tone of someone relaying information they have been asked to relay. Celeste set Mia up in the East Garden with a juice box and a serious conversation about staying inside the stone path. Mia listened with the attentiveness she only deployed when she was actually going to do something other than what she was told, which meant she was going to stay inside the path because she had found something interesting near the hydrangeas. 2 hours later, Celeste passed a first-floor window and looked out into the garden. Mia was crouched over a beetle near the stone path, speaking to it in French, asking it what it ate and whether it had a family and whether it found the garden comfortable. She had a stick. She was using it as a microphone. On the far side of the garden wall, on the other side of the glass, Mr. Yoon was on a phone call. He was standing at the window with one hand in his pocket and his phone to his ear, talking to someone who was presumably important, and he had paused mid-sentence because he was watching Mia interview the beetle. He noticed Celeste at the window. He held up one finger. She watched him say something brief and firm into the phone and take it away from his ear. He waved at Mia. Mia looked up, waved back without breaking her interview, and returned to the beetle. Mr. Yoon looked at Celeste through the glass. He was almost smiling. It was the kind of almost smile that lives in the eyes only and does not make it to the mouth. She went back to the baseboards. At the end of the day, she found a small container outside the staff locker room. Mrs. Yim's handwriting on the label, neat and slanted. Inside, braised short rib over rice, a side of pickled cucumber, and a small container of barley tea. 3 things Celeste had mentioned once in passing at the staff meal. She had not thought anyone was listening. Mia appeared at her elbow. "Mr. Shu Man sent it," she said. "Do you know?" He waved at me through the window, and then the food came, Mia said, with the patient tone she used when causality seemed obvious. "So obviously." Celeste opened the lid. There was a folded note tucked against the inside, 4 lines in neat handwriting that leaned slightly to the right. It said he hoped she was eating properly, and that Mia's beetle interview methodology seemed thorough, and that the hydrangeas in the east corner needed someone to talk to them occasionally, and Mia was welcome anytime. Celeste read it twice. She folded it exactly as it was. She put it in her jacket pocket and did not take it out again that evening, but she was aware of it the entire way home on the bus, the way you are aware of something small and warm sitting close to you in the dark. She was cleaning the ground floor windows on a Thursday morning when the car arrived. She knew the walk before she knew the face. 6 years was a long time, but some things did not change. The particular way this woman moved through a space, as though the space had been arranged specifically for her arrival. The way she paused at the estate entrance just long enough to be seen pausing. Celeste's hands stopped moving on the glass. Myra Sion was 28 years old. Polished in the way that required money and effort in equal amounts. She was wearing something pale and structured, and she was speaking to the estate's front staff with the ease of someone who had already decided she lived here. Celeste thought about Amsterdam. She thought about the co-working space on Heerngracht, 4th floor, the one with the broken radiator, and the good light that came through the east windows in the morning. She thought about the 2 years she had spent building her design consultancy from a shared desk, and a client list she had assembled one cold email at a time. She thought about her partner, Don, who had sat across from her at that desk for 22 months and had been, the whole time, feeding the client list and the contracts and the intellectual property to Myra Sion's family holding company in exchange for a job offer he had accepted 4 months before he told Celeste it was over. By the time Celeste understood what had happened, there was nothing left with her name on it. She had come to this city with one suitcase, one child, and a kind of anger she had worked very hard to make quiet. She looked at Myra Sion walking into the Chinga estate like she was walking into a room she owned and thought, of course, of course. They passed each other in the second-floor corridor 20 minutes later. Celeste was pushing her cart. Myra stopped walking. She looked at Celeste the way you look at a piece of furniture you recognize from a previous house. A mild, detached recognition that communicated clearly that you had never assigned the furniture any particular importance. Celeste, she said, it's been a long time. It has, Celeste said. I heard you'd landed somewhere stable. Her voice was warm in the way that expensive things were sometimes warm on the surface, exactly as far down as the surface. That must be a relief. It is, Celeste said. She kept her hands loose at her sides. She kept her expression professional. She held Myra's gaze for exactly long enough that it did not look like she was breaking it, and then she moved her cart forward and continued down the corridor. She found the supply room, closed the door, and stood very still for 45 seconds. She breathed. She thought about Mia in the East Garden interviewing beetles. She thought about a folded note in her jacket pocket. She thought about the fact that she had survived Amsterdam and she could survive this corridor. Then she started moving again. That evening, Mia was asleep in the armchair in Mr. Yoon's study under a blanket he had placed there without commenting on it, and Celeste sat in the chair across the desk where Mia had sat on that first day, and she told him about Amsterdam, not all of it. Enough. He listened without interrupting. His elbows were on the desk, and his hands were loosely folded, and he watched her the way people watch things they want to understand correctly, without the distraction of deciding what to say next. When she finished, there was a pause. Arrangement with the Sion family, he said. It was my mother's, not mine. Celeste looked at him. She made it 2 years ago when I was finishing a restructure that left me no time to argue about anything outside of work, he said. I have been letting it sit because fighting it required energy I haven't had, and because, he stopped, he looked at his hands. Because I told myself I would figure out something better eventually. I have not been in a hurry to figure it out. He looked up. Until recently I didn't know what better looked like. Celeste did not say anything. Outside the window the city was doing what cities do at night, its noise distant and constant and indifferent. Take whatever time you need, he said. He said it like he meant it completely. There is no deadline. Mia shifted in the armchair and made a small sound and settled again. Celeste watched her daughter sleep. She likes you, Celeste said quietly. Feeling, Mr. Yoon said, is entirely mutual. Formal dinner was 3 days later. Celeste knew about it the way the cleaning staff knew about all the estate's events, through Mrs. Yim's grocery orders, and the additional chairs being moved into the main dining room, and the particular tension that settled over the ground floor staff like weather before a storm. The Sion family, legal representatives, 2 board members from Darien, the long mahogany table in the main dining room that Celeste had cleaned 16 times and stood next to with her hands on her cart and never sat near. She was not thinking about the dinner. She was in the 3rd floor corridor at 7 in the evening finishing a window treatment she had rescheduled twice, and Park T was with Mia in the East Garden because it was a clear night, and Mia had asked very persuasively about whether beetles slept, and Park T had not been able to resist the question. She heard the door to the East Garden close at 7:15. Park T's footsteps in the corridor at 7:17. She assumed Mia was with him. She assumed incorrectly. The sound she heard next was the particular click of the dining room doors opening, which she recognized because she had cleaned those hinges with a very specific oil that made a very specific sound. She heard it from the corridor above, and she thought nothing of it until she heard, from inside the dining room, the unmistakable sound of yellow sneakers on hardwood flooring. both sneakers blinking. She was at the top of the main staircase when she heard the room go quiet. She went down the stairs in 17 seconds. She had not known she could move that fast in work shoes. Through the gap in the dining room doors, she could see the full length of the table. The Sion family, the legal team, the board members. Mr. Yoon at the head of the table, his expression contained in the specific way he contained things when he was paying very close attention. And Mia. Standing in the center of the room in her pajamas, both sneakers lighting the floor in slow yellow pulses, her hands clasped in front of her like she was about to give a presentation she had prepared. Park T appeared behind Celeste in the doorway with an expression of professional defeat, so complete it was almost artistic. Mia began to speak. She spoke in French first, because French was how she organized important thoughts, and then she translated herself into English because she was, above all things, a considerate communicator. She said that she and her mother lived here now. In the important parts of the house. Not the supply room and not the staff corridor, but the important parts. The parts with the good chairs and the newspapers and the garden where the beetles needed talking to. She said this was correct and right because Mr. Shoeman had tied her shoes with a double knot, and her father had never done that. He had tied them once and they came undone and he had not come back to fix it. But a double knot stayed. A double knot meant you were staying. Therefore, she concluded, they were staying. The room was silent. Celeste pushed the door open. She was going to go in and collect her daughter and apologize for the last time because she was going to have to find another job tomorrow, and there was no version of this evening that ended any other way. She stepped inside. Myra Sion set down her wine glass. She turned in her chair to face Celeste with the composed precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment without knowing exactly when it would arrive. I think, Myra said, her voice warm, controlled, and carrying clearly to every corner of the room, that there may be some confusion about the nature of the staff's relationship to the household. It's easy, I imagine, for lines to become blurred when, Mira, Mr. Yoon's voice was quiet. That was the first thing Celeste noticed, how quiet it was. Not raised, not sharp, just very, very clear. He stood up. He looked down the table at the legal team, at the board members, at the 2 senior Sion family members who had flown in that afternoon, and he spoke without any performance in it, the way he spoke about shirts that did not matter. Design consultancy that collapsed in Amsterdam 6 years ago has been documented, he said. The contracts that were transferred, the client list, the IP. The timeline of those transfers against the timeline of the job offer that was made to the principal's former partner. He paused. I have read that documentation carefully, all of it. Room was very still. Celeste Arden built something real, he said, and it was taken from her by people who are represented at this table tonight. He looked at Myra. His expression did not change. The arrangement my mother made is not something I am going to honor. I should have said that sooner. I'm saying it now. He looked at Mia, who was watching him with her hands still clasped and her sneakers still blinking. Mia is correct, he said. A double knot means you are staying. Dining room emptied in the way rooms empty after something irreversible has been said, quickly, with purpose, without much eye contact. Celeste stood in the corridor outside with Mia in her arms, one yellow sneaker against her chest, the other blinking at the floor, and she did not know what her face was doing, but she could feel that it was doing several things at once. She heard footsteps. Mr. Yoon came through the dining room doors and stopped when he saw her. They stood in the corridor. Mia was heavy and warm against Celeste's shoulder and already halfway asleep, because apparently formal confrontations were not sufficient to disrupt her schedule. I don't know what comes next, Celeste said. She said it honestly because she did not have the energy left for anything else. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what this is. That's fine, he said. It's not I have Mia. I have a lot of things that are not simple. I have a history that is complicated, and I do not trust easily, and I have very good reasons for that. I know, he said. I'm nervous. That's allowed. She looked at him. She felt the note folded in her jacket pocket, 4 lines in handwriting that leaned slightly to the right. She thought about a man tying a double knot on a yellow sneaker like it was the most important thing he had done all week. She thought about 40 minutes of silence in a corridor that felt like the safest 40 minutes she had spent in 2 years. You can stay, he said. Not as cleaning staff, as whatever you figure out you want to be. There is no deadline on it. He looked at Mia. The East Garden needs someone to interview the Beatles. I cannot do it myself. I have been told my methodology is insufficiently thorough. Celeste laughed. It came out before she could stop it, short and real, and she pressed her lips together, but it was already out. Mia, half asleep, reached one hand out without opening her eyes. She found Celeste's hand. She patted it twice. She found Mr. Yoon's hand. She patted it twice. She made a small sound of satisfaction and tucked her face back against Celeste's shoulder. The corridor was quiet. Okay, Celeste said. Her voice was not entirely steady. Okay, he nodded. He did not push past the word. He understood, she thought, that okay from her was not a small thing. He received it like it was not a small thing. Later, Celeste would try to explain it to herself. The shape of how things had changed. She had come to this city with a suitcase and a child, and the kind of anger that was really grief wearing different clothes. And she had put her head down and her hands to work. And she had not been looking for anything, because she had learned in Amsterdam that looking for things made you stop watching where you were going. She had not been looking. She had been 3 minutes and 40 seconds away from a bench outside a staff elevator. And in those 3 minutes and 40 seconds, her daughter had found a door that was open just enough, and a man who was powerful in all the ways the world measured power, and lonely in all the ways that did not show up in business magazines. And she had climbed onto his lap and fallen asleep, and in doing so had broken something open in both of them that neither of them had known how to open themselves. That was the thing about beginnings, Celeste thought. They did not wait for you to be ready. They did not announce themselves, or clear their throat, or give you time to prepare. They were already 4 minutes old by the time you noticed them. They were already happening in a room you had not known you were allowed to enter. She thought about a double knot, about the particular care it takes to tie one, the way you have to fold the loop back on itself, the way it takes a deliberate second step that the single knot does not require. She had told Mia for years that a double knot meant you were serious, that it meant you were not going anywhere, that it meant the shoe was going to stay on no matter what. She had not expected someone to show her she had meant more than shoes. The final image she would hold from that evening. 2 yellow sneakers sitting side by side outside the door of the study, their small lights blinking slowly, softly, in the dark of the corridor. Inside, someone was reading quietly. Inside, the silence meant something good. If this story moved you the way it moved us making it, take 2 seconds right now and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment below. We want to know, what was the moment that got you? Was it the double knot? Was it Mia and the beetle? Was it the dinner? Tell us. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story about starting over, share this with them. We will see you in the next one.